My name is Evelyn Sharp. I'm 58 years old. And the moment I knew my 30-year marriage was over wasn't during a screaming fight or a lawyer's phone call. It was in the soft hum of violins, in the hush of 300 guests, watching my daughter walk down the aisle in the warmth of my husband's breath as he leaned close to my ear and said, "After this, I'm moving out. I've already packed. We'll talk later." Just like that. No emotion, no apology, just a casual whisper as if he were commenting on the weather or the menu. My fingers gripped the white rose bouquet tighter, but my face didn't flinch. I nodded calmly, politely, like the perfect wife I'd always been. "Of course, dear," I murmured, and that's when I knew. Douglas Sharp thought he'd won. He believed he'd found the perfect moment to detonate his betrayal when I was surrounded by family and friends' cameras clicking all eyes on our daughter. When I couldn't scream or cry or make a scene, he thought I'd crumble silently, that I'd stay frozen just like always. But what he didn't know, what he could never have guessed, is that I'd seen this moment coming. And I'd been preparing. Oh, I'd been preparing for months. As Victoria moved down the garden aisle of our Charleston estate, wearing her grandmother's pearls and that hopeful smile only brides have, I stood next to the man I'd spent half my life building a world with and realized just how badly he'd underestimated me. I didn't glance at him again. Instead, my eyes drifted 3 rows back. There she was, Leah Morrison, 28, polished, poised, and far too well dressed for someone earning a secretary's salary. That navy blue dress, easily $1,000. Her hair freshly blown out. Her nails French tipped. I'd met her twice at Bright Hollow development events the company Douglas and I had built together. I thought she was professional, pleasant, stupid. I'd been so stupid, but not anymore. As the vows began and the officiant spoke about trust and commitment, the irony wasn't lost on me. My husband stood tall, a proud smile on his face, his tie straight and perfect looking, every bit the devoted father. No one in that crowd knew that the man beside me had already moved out of our home, that he'd signed a lease for a luxury downtown condo, that he'd rerouted money from our joint investment accounts to secretly fund his new life with Leah. But I knew, because I'd been watching and tracking and documenting. 6 months ago, I started noticing the changes. The late-night meetings, the new tailored suits that he never mentioned, the cologne that wasn't mine, the phone that never left his pocket even in the bathroom. At first I told myself it was stress, business, maybe even a midlife crisis. But when he started referring to Leah only as my assistant, like she didn't have a name, I knew. And I stopped guessing. I started confirming. I went back over our joint credit card statements. Noticed the odd charges, a boutique I didn't shop at, a restaurant I'd never been to, jewelry I never received. Then came the second cell phone, hidden under the driver's seat of his BMW. Password protected, but not to someone like me, someone who's managed every detail of our family's estate for 3 decades. I'm not just a housewife, I'm a CPA, a damn good one. I gave up my career for Douglas to raise Victoria, to build his business, to keep the home running while he shook hands and gave speeches. I made sure every bill was paid, every tax, filed every investment sound. He thought I was just balancing checkbooks while he played empire builder. But behind the scenes, I created the empire's foundation, and now I was about to watch it collapse from the inside out. 3 months ago, I hired Catherine Webb, private investigator, discreet, efficient, and highly recommended by my attorney, Harrison Phillips. Within a week, I had the first batch of evidence, Douglas and Leah arm in arm outside that apartment building downtown. Another week, and I had receipts, financial records, text logs, a timeline of deceit so precise it read like a criminal report. But the final nail, the condo lease. Douglas had signed it 2 months ago, listing Leah as a co-occupant. Paid the deposit from a business account I'd never seen, one he opened in secret, then filled with funds siphoned off from our investments. It was all so methodical, so arrogant, so incredibly sloppy. As Victoria and Thomas exchanged rings beneath the blooming magnolia trees, I smiled for the cameras. I dabbed tears from my eyes when Victoria's voice cracked. Everyone thought it was emotion, and it was, but not the kind they assumed. Douglas thought he'd trapped me, that he'd executed a perfect clean exit. But the truth, he was the one, walking into a trap. My trap. The ceremony ended in a blur of champagne toasts, laughter, and flash photography. Everyone wanted a picture with the happy couple and their happy parents. Douglas and I stood arm in arm, smiling like nothing was wrong. He played the charming husband to perfection. You'd think we were hosting our daughter's wedding from a place of love, not betrayal. But beneath my smile, every moment was calculation. As guests mingled in the garden, I moved through the crowd like a ghost, elegant, polite, and invisible in the way older women often become once their daughters take center stage. No one noticed the envelope tucked in my clutch. No one saw the quiet fire behind my eyes. Because while Douglas played his final scene, I was already executing mine. It started 2 months earlier in Harrison Phillips' office, our longtime family attorney. His building overlooks Charleston Harbor, and I remember staring at the sailboats while I handed him the first packet of documents Catherine Webb had compiled. Photos, bank statements, a timeline, all in black and white. "Evelyn," he said, after reading in silence for several minutes. "What your husband has done qualifies as marital misconduct under South Carolina law." Harrison laid it out clearly: Douglas's secret financial transfers, his concealed condo lease, his hidden business account. Every move was a legal misstep. And while I could have gone scorched earth, I had a different idea. "I don't want to destroy him publicly," I told Harrison. "I want him to destroy himself." That's when we designed what Harrison called the surgical approach. We didn't block Douglas's transfers. We let him continue. Let him think he was moving money into safe havens. But behind the scenes, I began quietly restructuring everything. Our family home, the Kiowa Island vacation house, the rental properties, the retirement accounts, even our primary business assets. All of it moved into irrevocable trusts and protected legal entities. By the time Douglas noticed anything, he'd be weeks too late. I signed documents in secret. I redirected communications. I created layers of legal protection so dense that not even Harrison could access certain holdings without dual authorization. Douglas thought he was clever, siphoning money, slowly hiding it under false names, shifting it away before making his big announcement. But in reality, he was stealing money from a pot that was no longer his. The irony still makes me smile. Catherine's final discovery was the most satisfying of all. She'd found the paperwork for a transition account Douglas created to support his new life with Leah. He'd funneled nearly $500,000 into it over 4 months, only to discover later that most of those funds had originated from holdings he no longer legally controlled. "He's been funding his mistress with assets he doesn't own," Catherine told me dryly. "And every transfer strengthens your case." By the time Victoria's wedding weekend rolled around, everything was ready. I had the documents, the evidence, the divorce papers prepared and dated. I'd even arranged to meet with a financial crimes liaison at the district attorney's office just in case Douglas tried to fight back dirty. The final step: waiting. Waiting for him to say something, do something. Prove that his arrogance was still intact. And of course he did. The rehearsal dinner was a surreal experience. Douglas gave a glowing speech about commitment, love, and 30 years of marriage. He called me the heart of the family, praised my sacrifice, my patience, my strength. Guests wiped their eyes. I smiled and nodded, holding my wine glass steady. Leah watched from the edge of the room, silent, observing, wearing another designer dress. She probably thought she'd won. Later that night, I saw Douglas slip outside to take a call. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. I already knew the content of his conversations, the tone of his texts. I had the transcripts. What he didn't know was that his phone, his secret phone, had been cloned, and Catherine had been tracking him for months. Every whisper, every message, every hotel booking, every flower delivery, all documented, all admissible, all ready to become very public if necessary. The day of the wedding arrived clear and bright, a perfect Charleston spring morning. I woke early, reviewed the paperwork one last time, placed everything in the envelope, and tucked it into my purse. Then I dressed, applied my makeup, and stepped into the garden like a woman who had nothing to hide. And in a way, I didn't. I'd already done the hard part, surviving the betrayal. Now I just had to end it. As the photographer positioned us for family photos, Douglas leaned close again. I felt the heat of his breath as he repeated what he'd whispered before. "I think this is the cleanest way, Evelyn. No messy drama, no legal war." I looked him dead in the eyes. "I agree. A clean break is exactly what we need." He smiled, probably relieved, believing I'd rolled over again, that I'd go quietly just like I always had. He didn't realize he was the one walking into the fire. After the toasts, the dancing, and the final round of applause for the newlyweds, the crowd slowly thinned. Victoria and Thomas had left in a shower of rice and cheers, bound for their Italian honeymoon. Guests lingered briefly to hug us, offer congratulations, and comment on the beauty of the ceremony. One even said, "You two are such an inspiration." Still so in love after all these years, I just smiled and thanked them because what else could I say? They didn't see the man standing next to me for what he really was. They saw the mask, the practiced performance of a man who had been building a dual life with meticulous detail and no soul. When the last guest left and the catering crew began breaking down tables and flower arches, Douglas and I were finally alone. The garden was silent now, petals scattered across the stone path, the faint clinking of glasses being packed away. He looked content, as if he'd pulled it off. "That went well," he said, stretching his back and loosening his tie. Victoria looked happy. "She did," I agreed. Then I reached into my clutch and pulled out the manila envelope I'd carried with me all day. "I believe you mentioned we needed to talk," I said calmly, handing it to him. Douglas blinked. "What's this?" "Everything you'll need for your fresh start." I said it as if I were handing over a gift. In a way, I was. He opened it, expecting what a handwritten note, a list of items to pack a gentle letter of closure. He got divorce papers, filed 3 weeks prior, a full breakdown of our marital assets, copies of every account he'd touched without authorization, legal documents proving my restructuring efforts, records from the DA's office signed and time-stamped, and one beautiful page detailing all the accounts he'd tried to use and now couldn't access. I watched the progression on his face like a slow-motion train wreck. First a puzzled frown, then alarm, then full-blown panic. "This is dated before the wedding," he said, his voice cracking as he flipped through the pages. You filed these 3 weeks ago." I nodded. "The day after I found the lease for the apartment." His fingers shook as he pulled out the asset list. "You moved everything into trusts before Evelyn, this isn't legal. This can't be legal. These are our accounts. I moved that money," Douglas, I said, still composed. "You moved money you no longer had legal access to. That's called dissipation of marital assets. Harrison already filed paperwork with the district attorney's office. Every transfer is being investigated. No, this isn't." He looked around as if trying to anchor himself in reality. "This isn't how this was supposed to go." I almost laughed. He truly believed he could destroy our marriage fund, an affair, build a new life, and still come out on top. He didn't just underestimate me, he erased me from his plans entirely. "Everything you've touched," I said softly, "everything you funneled into those accounts is no longer yours." He shook his head slowly. "You've been planning this for months." "Why didn't you say anything?" I tilted my head. "Why didn't you?" For the first time in 30 years, I saw Douglas not as a powerful businessman, not as my husband, but as a man caught naked in his own arrogance. He'd been so confident, so certain that I wouldn't fight back, that I wouldn't know how. But the truth is, I'd been the quiet architect of our empire all along. He was just the face. I was the foundation. And I had finally removed the scaffolding. He tried bargaining, begging, promising to end things with Leah, to cancel the apartment, to try counseling. "We don't have to destroy everything we've built," he pleaded. I asked. "You destroyed it the moment you whispered your goodbye while our daughter was walking down the aisle." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. That seemed to unnerve him even more. "I'll fight this," he said. Finally, his voice low but trembling. "I'll call my attorney. We'll see what a judge says." I nodded. "You could. But you should know if you fight this, the DA will pursue the fraud case. Every document, every photo, every message will become part of the public record. Victoria will see it. Your investors will see it. Charleston society will see it." He went silent. He knew I was right. He'd already lost. The only thing left was whether he would lose quietly or lose everything. I stood in the garden where my daughter had said her vows just hours earlier and looked at the man who had once been my whole world, and I saw a stranger unraveling in front of me. By the following Monday morning, Douglas's life looked the same from the outside. He dressed in one of his crisp new suits, left the house with his leather briefcase, and headed into downtown Charleston like he always did. But behind that facade, the structure was already crumbling. That morning, he discovered his corporate credit card had been declined, then his personal one. When he called the bank, they informed him that the authorized signer on the business account Me had removed his access. Then came the email from the investment firm, a courtesy notification that his attempts to withdraw funds had failed. The accounts were now governed by irrevocable trust agreements, no transactions allowed without my signature. By lunchtime, he'd left 6 voicemails on my phone. By dinner, there were 20. I didn't respond to a single one, because there was nothing left to say. The man who had whispered betrayal into my ear during our daughter's wedding thought he could rewrite 30 years of partnership with a one-sentence exit. He was learning the hard way that I'd written the rest of the script. Leah Morrison submitted her resignation that same week. No explanation, no farewell lunch, just a short email and a clean desk. I imagine she realized what Catherine had already confirmed: her association with Douglas was toxic. The paper trail of their affair, the timeline of asset transfers, the suspicious condo lease. It was all enough to taint her professional name permanently in Charleston's tight-knit business world. Catherine had been meticulous, not just in documenting the affair, but in mapping out every questionable financial move. She built a case so airtight that even Douglas's own lawyer called Harrison privately to ask if there was any way to settle quietly. There wasn't, because Douglas hadn't just betrayed me. He'd betrayed the legal foundation of his own empire. He used company funds to finance personal assets, falsified business expenses, lied to financial advisors, and left enough digital footprints to fill a courtroom. Within 2 weeks, the district attorney's office launched a preliminary fraud inquiry. Douglas went into damage control mode. I heard from mutual acquaintances that he started calling up old business contacts, trying to rally support, casting himself as the victim of a vengeful wife. But Charleston's elite don't tolerate scandal, not the kind that involves financial impropriety. Investors pulled out of 3 of his ongoing development projects. A 4th, his crown jewel downtown hotel renovation, was halted due to internal restructuring, which everyone knew meant financial instability. The press hadn't gotten wind of it yet, but whispers were everywhere, and I didn't have to say a word. While Douglas was calling attorneys trying to contain the mess, I was attending Victoria's post-wedding brunch, smiling, hugging her friends, listening to honeymoon stories from her new in-laws. When people asked why Douglas wasn't there, I said simply, he had business to attend to. The irony made the orange juice taste sweeter. I played my role with grace because I'd already won. I didn't need to expose him, I only needed to let the truth catch up. And it did faster than I expected. 2 real estate partnerships dissolved their contracts with Bright Hollow Development. A prominent investor filed a civil claim for misrepresentation, citing suspicious bank activity linked to Douglas's accounts. And our daughter, she returned from Italy to find the headlines swirling quietly through Charleston society columns. Prominent developer faces legal scrutiny. Victoria called me, her voice uncertain. "Mom, is it true I didn't lie?" "Yes," I told her gently, "but everything's going to be fine, I promise." She was silent for a long moment. Did you know at the wedding? Yes. More silence. And then, I'm proud of you. That was the moment that hit me the hardest. Not the betrayal, not the legal battles, but hearing my daughter say those words with quiet strength. She'd watched me play the role of silent supporter for years. Now she saw the woman behind the mask, and she respected her. Douglas, on the other hand, was unraveling fast. The DA's office moved forward with an official investigation into misappropriation of funds. Catherine handed over every file, every email, every document. The puzzle was complete. Douglas had turned our legacy into a liability, and now he had to answer for it. The call stopped. At first, it was just a pause in the endless stream of voicemails. Then a full day went by. 2, then a week. Douglas had gone quiet. But not because he'd accepted defeat, because he was scrambling, trying to stay afloat as the walls he'd built so carefully collapsed around him. Word spread faster than wildfire through Charleston's social circles. Not because I told anyone, but because whispers love to travel when reputations are involved, especially the fall of someone like Douglas Sharp, a man who built his name on charm, credibility, and connections. The invitations stopped coming. So did the smiles in the boardroom. One of his longest-standing clients pulled out of a contract worth nearly 8 figures. Another closed their offices to any Sharp-affiliated vendors. He'd spent decades crafting the illusion of being irreplaceable, and in 2 weeks, that illusion shattered. Meanwhile, I kept moving. I retained sole control of the real estate holdings we once shared. All the income-generating properties were now legally mine-managed through trusts he couldn't touch. The Kiowa Island Retreat Mine, the family estate in Charleston, still mine. The business accounts he thought he'd drained reimbursed through court orders once the dissipation of assets was formally recognized. Douglas tried once more to contact me, this time through Harrison. He wanted to discuss terms. But the time for negotiation had passed. He didn't get to whisper goodbye at our daughter's wedding and then ask for a compromise. Instead, Harrison sent over the final settlement packet, asset division already resolved, financial restitution calculated, and a strict non-disparagement clause that would protect Victoria from further scandal. Douglas signed it, quietly, without protest, because he knew what would happen if he didn't. Everything would go public, every photo, every text, every late-night meeting with Leah, every suspicious withdrawal and account transfer. Catherine had documented it all, and we were prepared to submit the evidence to both civil and criminal courts. But that wasn't the route I wanted. This wasn't revenge for me, it was liberation. I didn't need his public ruin. I only needed him out of the way, and now he was. Leah. She moved to Atlanta according to one of Catherine's follow-up reports. Quietly. No job listed, no public social media. Just disappeared. I didn't care enough to track her beyond that. She wasn't my concern anymore. My concern was healing, building something new. For myself. For 30 years, I'd been the architect behind someone else's dream. I ran the books, managed the staff, raised the child, built the lifestyle. And now, for the first time in decades, I wasn't answering to anyone but myself. I took a short trip to Maine, just a week, stayed in a seaside cottage and read every day by the water. No spreadsheets, no calls, no planning, just silence. It was strange at first, almost unsettling. But then I realized it wasn't emptiness, it was peace. When I came back to Charleston, I started a financial consulting group for women in transitional phases, divorcees, widows, women leaving toxic partnerships. They came in quietly at first, hesitant, nervous, and then they saw me. And something clicked, because I knew exactly what it felt like to be blindsided, to be underestimated, to be dismissed. But more importantly, I knew how to rebuild. One woman told me, "You don't look like someone who's been through hell." I smiled. That's because I walked through it with my head up. The scandal around Douglas eventually faded, replaced by newer dramas, newer faces. But the consequences didn't disappear. He's no longer invited to any major investment tables. His business license is under review, and the whispers haven't stopped. He became the cautionary tale. The man who thought he could start over without looking back, only to discover that his past was waiting for him at the altar. 6 months later, I'm sitting alone in the same garden where Victoria said her vows. The magnolias are blooming again. Petals drift lazily to the ground and a soft breeze moves through the ivy-covered trellis. The same stone path she walked down in her wedding dress now leads only to quiet. No guests, no string quartet, just me, a cup of tea, and the peace that follows after a storm has passed. A lot has changed, and yet everything feels more mine now. Douglas is no longer a presence in my life. Not physically, not emotionally, not financially. He lives somewhere else now in a condo that no longer feels like a prize. According to Harrison, he's attempting to rebuild his reputation. But without Leah, without investors, and with most of his bridges burned behind him, the path is uphill, steep, lonely. He hasn't contacted Victoria since the divorce finalized. She told me she's okay with that. It hurts less than pretending she said. That broke my heart a little, but it also reminded me how strong she is, how much strength she must have learned just by watching me even when I didn't know she was looking. My daughter is married, building her own life, and I'm finally building mine. I never imagined I'd start over at 58, but here I am helping other women find their financial voice, mentoring young professionals, volunteering at a local shelter on weekends. My calendar used to be filled with Douglas's meetings and dinner reservations. Now it's filled with purpose. Sometimes I look back and wonder what would have happened if Douglas had chosen differently, if he'd been honest, if he'd just said he was unhappy. But then I remember he did choose. He chose betrayal. He chose secrecy. He chose himself. And that choice freed me. Because for the first time in decades, I'm not living under someone else's shadow. I'm not the wife behind the name. I am the name. Evelyn Sharp, businesswoman, survivor, teacher, builder. One of the women in my financial group said it best after her own difficult split. He didn't break me. He just broke the version of me that was willing to accept less. Exactly. I walk these garden paths now and I don't hear his voice. I hear mine. I hear the quiet that follows after you've spoken your truth. I hear the breeze rustling leaves, not whispers of scandal. People still ask from time to time how I stayed so calm, how I didn't confront him at the wedding, how I didn't tear everything down in rage. But I wasn't interested in chaos. I was interested in consequences. I didn't want revenge that looked dramatic. I wanted resolution that lasted. Douglas lost everything, not because I destroyed him, but because I stopped holding him up. I removed the scaffolding. The quiet, unseen support that made everything look effortless. And once that disappeared, so did the illusion. I no longer wear a mask. I no longer need to smile when I'm dying inside. I no longer pretend I'm fine for the sake of appearances. Now, when I smile, it's real. It's not because someone told me to. It's because I earned it. This garden, this home, this life I've reclaimed. It isn't haunted anymore. It's sacred. It's mine. So to anyone watching this who's been betrayed, discarded, or told they're just the background in someone else's story, hear me clearly. You are not the background. You are the story. You are the voice they didn't hear coming, the hand they didn't know was steering the ship. And when they whisper their goodbye like they're already gone, just smile. Let them go. Then build something so strong behind their back, they'll spend the rest of their life wondering how they ever thought they could live without you. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who claimed to love you? Share your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if Evelyn's story moved, you hit that like button and subscribe, because some betrayals break us, but others, they reveal the power we never knew we had.